episode 8 of Radio Omnicor. I'm your host, Colleen McClintock, and I'm joined by my co-host, Marcel Harper. As always, you can find all our podcasts on iTunes and our website, omnicor.co.za/podcast. This week features a very exciting guest, James Ashton, which is a sort of a homecoming, as James is the founder of Omnicor. He's an industrial psychologist, master coach, and captain of his ship, quite literally. We are talking about journeys and coaching and how Gestalt has made it into the executive coaching space. It really is a fascinating episode. Good. So in studio today for our podcast, we have a very, very special guest. And in South Africa, we have a tradition of, when we introduce special people, of having a praise singer. So I'm going to do my best, James, at being a praise singer. We've got James Ashton in studio with us. And James is, in fact, the founder of Omnicor, along with Cathy, his wife. And without you, James, none of this would actually be here. So it's quite an emotional moment. And we are so thrilled to host you on the podcast. And you have taught all of us here at Omnicor how to be and how to deliver the quality service. And it's just wonderful to be able to interview you in this different stage in your life and learn more from you, because every time I sit in a room with you, I feel like I need to take notes. So we're so thrilled. You are now the managing partner of Multiplex Partners, and you're out from Malta at the moment, and we managed to grab you in between your whirlwind tour of South Africa. And we're just thrilled to host you and to have a chat, and we'd love you to introduce yourself further. And we're going to be talking about a topic that I was really thrilled to know more about, which is Gestalt in coaching, which was just fascinating to even hear that it's happening. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about what you're doing, what's keeping you busy, what's exciting you?
Colleen, you don't know what a gift it is to have me back here. It's so nice to come back in through the doors. You're in a different place and the business is looking so different and growing in whole new directions. But it's so wonderful to come back and be surrounded by good old friends. So thanks.
It's great to have you
back. I'm in an interesting place. We have the business set up in Malta. We left South Africa. I sailed to Malta from England. I met my wife and daughter and our dog on the boat just outside Paris. And we spent months sailing down through France on the canals. And then we set sail into the Mediterranean, and we spent 6 months sailing the Mediterranean down towards Malta. And we set up home. And that was 4 years ago. So no growth is ever a straight line. And so now, bizarrely, as of yesterday, we have it that I live in Malta, my wife Cathy lives in Johannesburg, and my daughter Maddie lives in Cape Town.
Wow, a global village.
And it would be very easy if none of us liked each other. But, but the problem is I think we all like each other. But it's just there are many migrant workers all over the world, and I've just become one of them. Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, before you go on, James, whenever we're with clients who obviously all know you, the first thing they say is, "Where's James, and did he go on his boat?" It's become sort of a real, everyone wants to know what happened, where did you go? And
it's such an amazing thing, and it's I did a talk on it. I did a talk with one of your clients on the actual escape and how we set sail and how we dealt with hurricane force winds and how we went through the canals. And it's amazing to look back on it and think what a wonderful, wonderful time that was. Right now, we're building a brand new business. So the boat is sitting on the Hard in Valletta, the capital of, near Valletta in Malta. And I'm hoping to launch in 2 years' time again, but it's hard to launch a boat and sail when you're trying to do something as big as building the business. So the business is there, and it's growing. It's 2.5 years old now. So it's called Multiplex Partners, and there are 4 of us actively partnering the business, and we're working with a group of associate coaches and doing various things. We do 3 things. We train and accredit executive coaches. So our program's now recently accredited with the European Qualifications Framework. The first part of the program, so it's going to be a 3-part program. The first part is the certificate. The second part is the diploma, and together that's in Qualifications Framework language, that's 60 credits together. And then, very excitedly, and I'm not allowed to tell anyone, so
okay,
just
we won't tell anyone.
But there's a big possibility of us developing a gestalt-oriented master's degree in executive coaching through one of the more well-known English universities.
More well-known. Okay, that one.
No, not the Cambridge or Oxford level of well-known, and another university.
Okay. Wow.
So life is interesting. There's lots of really interesting stuff going on. We're working there. We work from Malta into the world, so we're working from there into Europe. A lot of coaching, actually all over the world. Right now, lots of coaching contracts in place, but sort of Brazil and Belgium are very exciting places for me to be working. And this coming year, we're expanding into Africa, down into Africa rather than up into Africa. And our business in Johannesburg is thriving. It's doing nicely. And I'm hoping, crossed fingers, I'm hoping to be working in the Middle East very shortly.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's not breaking news. That's news hoping to break any moment.
Yes.
It's great. We're having fun. We're doing good work. It's funny how much I've shifted since leaving Omnicor. What's happened, and I think it's going to be probably a central theme of our conversation, but what's happened is I discovered Gestalt as a wonderful woman in Malta called Lydia Pekocic something. She's the most magnificent woman who came from sort of broken Yugoslavia, experienced the war, and came to Malta in a sort of a healing frenzy, trying to, not of herself though, but bringing Gestalt and her teachings and really growing a magnificent set of schools in Malta and Eastern Europe, just trying to heal, using psychotherapy, not using coaching, but using psychotherapy, trying to heal the wounds that had happened from those wild and savage wars. So I'm a student of hers, as is Cathy. You mentioned Cathy, my wife. And so this year I'll be graduating as a psychotherapist. I'm hoping this year. and we're fully engaged with that identity. But for me, it's really the idea of doing the psychotherapy is really to support my coaching. So, and we'll talk about that, what that looks like.
I'm interested, James, you've said you've shifted so much. And what would you say the core shifts have been to the James I knew then to the one who sits here?
I think when we built Omnicor, it reflected where our excitement was at the time, and our excitement was corporate shift on large scale. I mean, we started this business, your business, in 1997, and at the time, South Africa was just coming out of an era of profound social dis-ease. Apartheid had recently ended, at least officially, and organizations across the country were trying to find ways of normalizing the way people of all colors were seen and brought up through the ranks. So how do you do that? How do you take someone who's not had schooling? How do you take someone who's not had decent schooling and sort of fast track them into business and give them a hope that possibly they can do it and stay, when so much of business is about performance and about fitting in? And if you've never been taught to work in an environment with colleagues where there's something as material or as ephemeral even as sort of values and purpose and mission, this is absolutely abstract and inconceivable to most people when life has been about survival.
Right. You're so set up to fail.
You completely. And set up to fail because you're not set up to understand. Right. And you're not skilled. You're not being given the skills. So I think when we came into the business, and when we started the business, the most exciting things for us were using psychometrics and assessments to see beyond the visible.
Right.
I remember a beautiful project that we ran, one of Omnicor's first projects, where a client came to us and said they want to give us 65 bursaries to black kids who should be in university, but because of the way society was structured, would never have the access. So they said it's quite an expensive bursary. It was a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer bursary, which I remember at the time was around 30,000 Rand, which was very significant money. Even now it's not throwaway money, but then it was very significant. So they wanted to give 65 of these bursaries, and they said to us, but we don't want a worse failure rate than we normally get. And then their normal failure rate is 50%.
Sure.
And that's from privileged kids from privileged schools. So we started, and we were quite novice. We were quite novice in the whole field, but we built a process where we took 600 people and we screened those 600 using an assessment approach down to 200. And then we used a richer assessment approach to screen 200 down to 67. And we produced 67, presented them to the client, and the client took 65 of them. You know, what was amazing to me is we were really prodding around in the dark. I mean, we were doing high integrity work, but we didn't know that it would work. And at the end of the program, now the only difference between the program these kids experienced and the one that was normally run was that for 1 hour during this program, each person sat with a mentor for 1 hour. So each kid on the program had a 1 hour contact with a mentor. Not a massive.
Throughout the program?
Throughout the program.
Right.
Just once. Just once.
Just once?
Yes.
Wow.
It was a 3-month program, and they sat with a mentor once. Instead of a 50% failure rate, we had a 95% pass rate.
Wow.
So what that means is that 95% of these people passed the program and were still employed in the learning part of their career a year later. Oh, it's amazing. I was just amazed at the power of this. The moment you stop looking at the way the person's dressed or the way they speak or looking at the way they smell because they've not got running water, or the moment you stop looking at that stuff and you start looking at what's their real potential at a core level, not the potential that becomes visible through education, but at a core level, amazing things are revealed. So we built the business around that sort of large-scale change, and we did beautiful work. And I think Omnicor today carries on doing very beautiful work, doing thousands of those assessments each month. So when we left, I think both Cathy and I had a sort of a sea change, a change of heart. And the change of heart was we want to work with individuals. We want to stop doing the macro size work, and we want to start doing the individual size work. And it was a complete fluke that saw us bumping into gestalt. I mean, when you go to a new country, if ever you go to a new country or you're in a new field and you have no contacts, you have no friends, you have no infrastructure. I mean, the day we stepped on Malta was the first time we actually ever spoke to a Maltese person about anything. No, that's not quite true. We'd organized a mooring with the Capitanerie, so we spoke to a Maltese person then.
Right.
But we were complete raw. We were straight off the boat.
Such change.
We were literally straight off the boat. And you're in a very raw place then.
Right.
Very vulnerable, in a very beautiful way. You're raw, you're vulnerable. And somehow the whole Gestalt movement became figural for us. It became something we were faced with. And it's become such a valuable part of how we see the world now.
So great, James. So tell me a little bit more about how that actually works for you. Because I must say that if I said to you 4 years ago, James, you're going to be chatting to me about using Gestalt in coaching, would you have in any way thought that was possible?
I remember doing Psychology 101 and remembering that Gestalt was about something to do with broken lines and not seeing the whole pattern, and something about an old lady and a young lady, and that was about it. So I definitely not 4 years ago. No, definitely not. And in fact, 4 years ago, as as a proud performance coach, I would have shied away from any inclusion of any sort of strong psychotherapeutic background into coaching. But I'm really excited about how I've integrated. In fact, I've just finished and submitted my master coach submission. I had to get that in. Colleen.
Great. I think you should. I think you should.
And a large part of that for me was trying to resolve this issue of when is it therapy, when is it coaching, because it's a really complex question. I knew you'd ask it. I knew you'd go straight for the jugular.
Sorry.
You know, if you look at the way people treat this, you start getting this question of when is it therapy, when is it coaching. You start getting into some really glib, quick, easy off the tongue answers. We hear that therapy is about the past, coaching is about the future. Well, that's rubbish. It's not true. It's part of the truth, but it's not the whole truth. You know, if you're sitting in front of if you're sitting in front of a client, you're working with the client. Yesterday, I was working with a client in Johannesburg, and the client's been through some real political hell over the last few months. Horrible, horrible stuff. It's a coaching issue. It's a coaching question. Right. The question is, the big picture question is about finding voice and executive disposition. But there's another very big part of that what are you going to do with that? You know, you can't drive what executive disposition looks like, because something keeps tripping this person up that's got nothing to do with a lack of knowledge of what the skills look like. It's impossible to, particularly with very senior people, where a lack of skills, a lack of resilience, a lack of cleverness has usually been weeded out. By the time people come towards the top of any business, any organization, you're usually dealing with high-functioning people, not necessarily high-functioning in that context, but high-functioning. And it became very apparent to me as I was working as a coach before this reinvention, that I was sort of ending up in the Sahara Desert too often, with a lack of ground, a lack of where to now. Right. And so what I'm listening to when people are talking about therapy and coaching and this split, I'm starting to feel, and this is even before now, this is even before my last 4 years' experience, I'm starting to feel there's something missing. You know, I talk about full contact coaching, and if you're sitting in front of your client, you'll do anything you can to support them to make the move they need to move. Right. You'll do virtually anything you can within the bound of ethics and very importantly, the bound of your contract to make the move. So when people are telling me that coaching and therapy are different, because in therapy you assume that an emotional response is something wrong, and that sounds so wrong to me even to say it, but that's written by a guy called Williams, that in therapy the assumption is that emotions are often a symptom of something wrong or something that needs to be contained, and in therapy that emotions are natural and it's like part of the energy going forward. I mean, even as I'm saying that, it sounds hollow and rubbish. It can't be real.
It's so polarized.
It's so completely binary. So I think for me, and I've grappled long and hard with this, what I'm absolutely clear about is that the difference between coaching and therapy is essentially difficult to define, except the definition lies in your contract.
Right.
If you contract with a client that you're going to do coaching, coaching is what you do. It doesn't matter if you're the greatest therapist in your country, you don't go into that space. Coaching is where you go, and what it means is you don't delve beyond the stuff that's needed to support your client to make a here and now move into a positive direction. Everyone's trying to do the best they can. Everyone all of the time is doing the very best they can to survive, to thrive, to move forward. Sometimes it looks really clumsy. Sometimes it ends up being criminal. Sometimes it's morally reprehensible. But in that moment, no one's choosing to be evil. No one's choosing to do a terrible job. Even the most horrible act at that precise moment of its being committed, is that person doing the best they can to survive. It doesn't forgive anyone. It doesn't excuse anyone. Businesses are filled with, I think businesses are filled with clients and people who are just doing the best they can to make life work for them. So when I'm coming to them as a coach, I'm very aware that I need to meet them. I need to listen to what they need from this, and I need to find a way of supporting them going forward. But I think what I was particularly tired of was understanding that the way to go forward is a goal. Right. It's not a goal. It can't always be a goal. And I think my whole movement towards including gestalt is simply to say purpose is more important than goal. In many situations, not always. There are real times when I use a great model like GROW, like John Whitmore's GROW. You have to use it. I use other methodologies. I'll use a bit of neuroscience. I'll use a bit, and we train people that even though we talk about gestalt-informed coaching, it's not a blanket methodology. It's simply solid ground to stand on. So, Colleen, simply for me, the difference between therapy and coaching is what does the company or the client contracting me want from me. If they want me to be a therapist, that's a separate issue. If they want me to be a coach, my bounds are smaller. It diminishes the amount of time we spend in the personal stuff. And I'm very strict about working in you had Mark Kahn on some time ago, and Mark was very clear on the idea of working with the client, the company, the sponsoring client, and the coach. And I agree. And I'll take that a step further. You're working within a multiplex of forces, and it's the client, the sponsoring company, and all of the chaos in the field that's affecting this client.
So can I ask a question around the contracting? Because I wonder also, so our clients don't know what they don't know. So in that contracting around, is this coaching versus therapy? If I was coming to the first session and we were contracting, I would probably not really know what I needed for sure, or even how would that look if it was therapy?
No, and therapy is not on the table.
Right.
Not on the table. I mean, if you call me, I'm an executive coach. If you call me, you know me in that context. If you call the business, you know it's in the context of executive coaching. So there's no question for you of should you do therapy, should you do coaching. The question lies in the ethics of the person providing you with this coaching service. So the fact is, you'll come to me and as a business person or as someone trying to do something, and your only framework will be, I'm in one place and I want to be in another place. How do I get there? All I'm talking about is a process or methodology that allows me to have much more theory behind me when I'm working with you. You won't feel my theory. You might, but generally you shouldn't be feeling my theory.
Dear.
I'm imagining you'll probably edit that part.
Definitely not.
I
might even hashtag
it. You mustn't feel my theory. I think I'm blushing. It's got to be held very lightly. It's got to be held with very light hands. But the difference, I think, for me is in the last years, I felt so much more contained in the way I'm teaching coaching and the way I'm performing as a professional executive coach, because I've got so much more of a body of theory to rely on, to hold on to.
And I think that's where coaching gets a bit of a bad name in the industry, where we have coaches who are going to coffee shops and chatting about things and considering, just random things, and then it's coaching, and there's no confidentiality, there's no ethics around it, and then coaching people like yourself who's coaching at this level, everyone gets a bad name around coaching in organizations. It's not easy to sell coaching. It's a big spend for people.
And yet it's such a massive, it is a big spend, and yet it's such a massively booming industry because, it really does get amazing results. It astonishes me just how profound the movement is. But I think you're right. I mean, it's very awkward. I think what's really important for me to say is that when I'm talking gestalt, I'm not talking about bringing a sort of acute new age sort of psychology to bear on my clients. All this approach is doing for me is it's providing me a broad approach, a broad way of working with my client that's going to help them give their best. That's all. So let me just maybe sketch it.
Great.
Okay. So one of the most popular, probably the most popular and most dominant form of coaching in the whole world is GROW. If you're looking for a single methodology, it's probably GROW, and GROW's great. So GROW is John Whitmore, and simply saying, he says, when you've got something in mind that you've got to achieve, use all of your skills of listening, your skills of compassion, empathy, all of this. But here's the structure for you, a 4-part structure. Use it richly. Don't use it like sort of plug and play. Bring your whole person to this encounter. But first of all, identify the goals that need to be met, G. Check out the realities of the context, R. O, look at what the options are with the client. And W, ensure that the client has the will to move forward. It's great. It's great. So I was watching someone being coached a while ago on one of our programs, and an outside coach was coaching somebody, and the person, the coachee, is trying to write a book, and she's been procrastinating on this book for forever. She's been wanting to write this book for probably 3 years. And every time she makes a start or books off a day, then something gets in the way. Some emergency happens, or there's something happening that means she's just not getting to the book. So the coach sits down, and without really checking to see what other options may be there for her, she starts moving rapidly through an internalized GROW approach. Let's call the coachee, what's a nice name? Sally.
Right.
So the coachee's name is Sally, and she says, okay, Sally, so tell me what you want to achieve, goal. Sally says, I want to write a book. I want to write a book in this field. So when do you want to write the book by? I want to write the book by first draft by August this year. And how long is the book? It's 13 chapters. And what are the chapters? And Sally's talking. Sally's just engaged in chit-chat. For Sally, this is chit-chat, under pressure. Now, what could get in the way? Well, I'm busy, I've got a job, I've got a child, I've got a house to run, I've got all sorts of things. Checking the reality. Options. What happens if you don't do this book? Nothing. What's the consequence if you're not writing this book? Nothing. What else could you do? I could get someone to ghostwrite this book. Is that good? Could you do that? Not really. It's a clever book. So I can't really use a ghostwriter to write this because it'll be just too frustrating. So now the coach has asked Sally to identify some options, and Sally has. And now the coach sort of is running out of time because it's an hour-long session. And she comes to the part about will. And she says to Sally, are you ready to write this book? And Sally looks with a deadpan face, aware that the session is coming to an end, and aware of her need to please the coach. And she says, yeah, it feels clearer than it was. It feels like I'm getting there. The coach is feeling a bit good about it. She says, so what about the August deadline? Sally says, yeah, it's doable. It's doable. And there's no chance in the world that this book is going to be written by August at this moment. Goal-oriented coaching is very important, but it's not always relevant. And in fact, I think, particularly as you move towards the higher levels of people in organizations or in sort of public performance, goal-oriented coaching is less and less relevant. As we talk about complexity, and I know this is your language, we talk about Elliot Jacks and levels of complexity. And at the higher levels of complexity, you can't be tying people down to what are you going to do by Thursday, what are you going to be doing by Friday. Something else has got to happen. And for me, what's really important about the Gestalt methodology is to say the device that helps the person move forward is not a goal, it's awareness.
Right.
Awareness is the most magnificent thing. Simple, gut level, bone deep, cellular awareness is in itself the key liberating device. It's quite amazing that if you take a person who is functional and if you help draw them into awareness about a particular reality, that's the work.
And that's sustainable because it's like a click.
And it's exactly a click, but it's not a click of a light switch going off. It's a quick click of a light switch going on.
Right.
And as you click that light switch on, and as the coach, you leave the room, you leave the space, you leave the building, the work carries on doing its thing.
Continues unfolding.
Continues. I'm working with a lovely man last night. I've been working with him for some time now, and he's coming towards the end of his tenure. He's now at the head of his large professional services firm. He's not the head, but he's one of the top 5. And he's wealthy beyond what anyone needs to be. And
is there such a thing?
I need to read a book on it. I think it's. He certainly is very, very happy with what he's been able to. He's very happy about his future being secure.
Right.
And but now at the age of sort of 60, he's wanting to start a brand new NGO, doing good, doing good in the world. And it's so interesting watching him procrastinate. It's so interesting watching him give other people work to do on his project. And what he's not doing is putting himself in the firing line. He's got 3 years of pre-retirement work to do still. But it's so interesting watching him do what he's always done. And what he's always done is get other people to create projects and things around him. He's, and I don't mean for a second that he goes missing in action. He's great. But as an entrepreneur starting this thing, it's going to require new skills. So awareness for him is not me telling him what's the goal, how do you move forward, how do you become an entrepreneur. Awareness for him is about remembering and identifying and seeing and feeling that he's working on old, well-worn paths. He's got old, well-worn roots of behavior that have served him brilliantly for the past however many years he's been in business, 45 years. But my question is not a clear question. It's not a question I've asked him, but it's a question I've prompted and he's asking himself. Which of those paths serve me into the future, and which of them are going to derail my efforts in the future? So what you've heard me say there is that the key activating process in human growth is awareness. In human performance growth, in the sort of organizational growth that we're talking about, particularly at high levels, is awareness. It's not tricks, it's not goals, it's not that stuff. So how do you get to awareness? So we're all busy all the time. I come in here, you've had a busy day, you've had a chaotic day, you've set up the studio. There are many things you're going to have to do later. You've got a meeting, you've got a dash, you've got to do this. Your world is very cluttered. So assuming for a second that I'm your coach, I've got an hour and a half with you. Now what? So the mechanism for me is I can't work with you in that scattered, frantic place. Right. I've got to do whatever it's going to take to draw you into focus with me. I've got to help you settle all of the stuff in your world and just identify the one thing that right now you're able to bring energy to. And my role as a coach is to help you become skilled at pulling out the thing that we're here to work on, pulling out that thing more and more easily, more and more readily, with more and more certainty for longer and longer. It's called figure and ground. So all the chaos in your life is your ground. Some of it's just clutter. A lot of it's beautiful stuff. You've got wonderful children. You've got a great husband. You've got a life. You've got a society. You've got a community. You've got stuff. Much of that is rich and beautiful. But if you come to this meeting with me with all of that clutter, we're going to do nothing. We're not going to dance. We're just going to see each other. It's going to be one of those frustrating experiences where you just don't feel like you got to it. So the role of the coach is to calm you down, to help you center yourself, and to identify the thing or the theme that you're ready to work on. That's the figure. So my role as a coach is to help you become skilled at letting your figure emerge. So this leads to probably the central device for me, and it's the whole issue of contact and contact making. And contact, I think, is probably the most beautiful human thing I've ever learned. It's a body of knowledge and understanding created sort of by the father of modern gestalt psychology, Fritz Perls. And he understands that our job is not to go the way some schools of psychology would go, which is about our job's not to be the expert, it's not to interpret, it's not to be the all-seeing expert. Our role, using a Gestalt framework, is to co-create something with you in the true sense of that word. I don't enter a coaching space as any form of expert, except I'm really good at process. Often. May not be with you, but it's my job to become good at process with you. Okay, so contact, I'll give you an example. So the capital of Malta is a city called Valletta. And Valletta was built in early 1600s. What happened was the Turks invaded Malta in 1565 and tried to take over this bastion of Christendom in the middle of the Mediterranean. And Suleiman came with 40,000 warriors, and they attacked a tiny little fort where the Knights of St. John were holding out. And it was a horrible siege, and it lasted 3 months, and it was bloody and violent and terrible and destructive. And in the end, the Turks were beaten off by the Christian defenders and the people of the island. Straight after that, the knights and the people of Malta decided those Turks are never getting that hill again, because what they'd done is quite a flat island. The Turks had encamped on top of really the only hill around, and they just spent the siege bombarding the little fort at the bottom. So the residents said that's never going to happen again, and they built a massive city all over that hill. The city is Valletta, and it's a Baroque city. It's magnificent. So 8 months ago, I was walking. I'd had a great meeting in the city, and I was walking out, and it was sunny, and you can't park in the city. So I'm walking out through the old gates where there would have been a drawbridge and the massive ditches built by all the slaves. Just massive. It's a really it feels like a real medieval place. It's 1600s. It's beautiful. And as I'm walking down I love Malta. It's very small, and it's got a national car park. I love the national car park. So I'm walking down towards the national car park, and as I'm walking, I'm feeling really good. I did good work. I've got a few hours off before I have to be anywhere. I'm in that sort of peaceful place, and I see a horse in front of me, a tourist horse. So it's tethered to a carriage or harnessed to a carriage, and I don't know horses, and as I'm walking towards it, I become aware that the horse is standing in a way that I didn't know horses stand. It's got one hoof sort of up. Almost like if it was a dog, it would have tucked it under its arm. And I become very interested in this. As I draw closer to this horse, I really become absorbed in the way the horse is standing. So I moved towards it, and I actually stopped right next to the horse. And I'm sort of stopping people traffic, and I become very aware that the horse has got a horseshoe. Now, I know horseshoes. I used to live in a fairly rural place. But every horseshoe I've ever seen, I've picked up. So it's rusty and brown. This was bright, shining silver. And it surprised me that, of course, horseshoes are silver because they get scuffed and sanded on the roads as they're walking. And I also noticed that the front of the horseshoe, the round part, was near the round part of the hoof. Of course, I realized, because it's much safer that way, because there's much less leverage to have it come off. I also saw how the farrier had nailed the shoe on, and the sort of nails they'd used, and how carefully they'd nailed it on. And I wondered how long those nails were, and how come it didn't hurt the horse. I was very aware of the patience of this horse. It was quite a remarkable thing that the horse was standing looking at this person. I was really patient, just waiting in the warm sun, waiting for me. And I was aware of really nothing else, not the driver, not the people around me, not where I was. I didn't feel silly. I just was really in that moment. I was loving it. After a few minutes, and it really was a few minutes, after a few minutes of my mental engagement with this, I started to feel that's enough. I started to feel this beautiful sense of, I've done it. I know as much about this horse as I need to know. And I actually found myself saying, do I want anything more? Do I need to stroke the horse? Do I need to speak to the driver? And I realized I want nothing more. So I just turned and I carried on my walk. And it sounds goofy, but it was the most beautiful moment. The walk from there to the car was one of those sort of heaven-given moments that I was just in complete peace. That was a moment of contact. And the importance of contact is that our role in business is to learn. We fantasize that we can learn because someone sets a goal for us. The truth is we only learn when we're in contact. Contact happens in brief moments. We can only learn when we're completely absorbed in the moment. Csikszentmihalyi talks about flow. Abraham Maslow talks about peak experiences. The importance of that is it's the only time when human beings experience fundamental shift, when they come to deep awareness and they're able to move forward. So Pearls is saying I've been through the contact cycle there. And the contact cycle draws me from sensation, here's a horse, to awareness, the horse is standing, it's looking weird. It's taking me from sensation to where I mobilize, and in mobilizing here is for me to actually stand still and engage with this horse. And then from mobilization, I move into this beautiful place of contact, moving from contact to full contact and then to withdrawal. When I've had enough, in that beautiful moment, I've had enough and I start to move away from needing this moment. And then I move from withdrawal and I walk on. And then I have the reward, the emotional reward. And I'm breathing out and I'm saying, I feel satisfied. And that satisfaction leads us to a space called the fertile void. And that fertile void is that place where you have no more needs. You love what you've learned and you can move on. So this is the skill of the coach. The skill of the coach is to respect that the content of the coaching is not important for now. The content is not what you're here for. The person can read a book. If they want content, they can watch YouTube if they want content. The purpose of coaching is to be helped in my busy, busy world to reach this moment of the fertile void where I'm open to learning. Now, we, as human beings, we learn not to reach this point because it's very intense. We learn to deflect, to disrupt our movement towards being in full contact. If you're training a group of people, or if you're running a meeting, you'll watch as the moment heats up. Some people will be really engaged; they're moving into contact, or they're even in full contact. But the intensity of it turns some people off, and they sit back in their seats and they move to their phone, which they haven't touched for half an hour. But it's something about the intensity that makes them want to break away. That's not because they're bad people. That's because they're using a device that protects them from intensity. So if you're coaching that person, it's wonderful, because through helping the person become aware of how they deal with intense moments, remember, intense moment equals opportunity to learn. By helping them become aware of that, you can help them move forward through and into learning, and then into the purpose or even the goal of what you're trying to do. But you can't chase goals until you've got the person ready and sort of vibrating with readiness to move forward.
So just the way you created that whole story, it was so beautiful, James, which you well known for, the storytelling competency, if there is one. But it brings for me, John Kabat-Zinn would talk about that as mindfulness and just being apart from the idea of withdrawing and it's enough. So mindfulness is I'm a big fan and really interested in how that impacts our health and all of those things. And just being in the moment without judgment, which also I pick up a little bit from how you articulating it. So how's it different to mindfulness?
I don't think it is. I think it's essentially the same thing.
Okay.
I think it's essentially the same thing where the conversation around mindfulness is, the danger of that is that mindfulness can be used in a punitive way quite rapidly. Mindfulness itself is a very beautiful thing, and the way authors write about it is very meaningful. But it's very easy to start pointing fingers and saying you're not mindful and you're not mindful and you're not being mindful. And I think that's, of course, not what mindfulness specialists or people working in the field would want. But it's a natural human instinct to start saying I have it and you don't have it. And I think what I love about this orientation, the gestalt or even the mindfulness orientation, is what does it look like when you look at someone who's not staying with you in contact in the moment? What happened? I was working with someone recently, a fabulous entrepreneur, South African guy, building a multi-million rand business, well, many multis of millions of rands business, and so energetic and so on fire. And the moment the conversation comes around to you and your experience and what's going on and what are you feeling in here, what's your real response to what you've just told me, switches into beautiful, elegant conversation and almost like you're listening to a scripted passage. That's him breaking contact with himself, with the emotional part of himself. He doesn't want to bring his emotions to work. He's learned to protect himself against them. So if mindfulness or gestalt is saying, let's use that as an opportunity to explore it and to help you become aware of it and then possibly to find ways around it or new ways or new pathways, then I think we're talking the same language. If it's at all critical, punitive, then we're talking a different language.
No, I think John Kabat-Zinn would be very clear that it's the whole key is to be in the moment without judgment, and that's a practice. It's not something you are or you aren't.
No, it is. But Colleen, I mean, I think we're both so aware. You and I are so aware of how quickly the purity of the original message gets corrupted in human hands because we very quickly start blaming people for not being this or not being that. And I'm trying to be mindful. What are you doing to me? You know, this is a very powerful understanding of how learning happens and how growth happens. And what I like about Gestalt is it just gives me a structure, not a structure. I can hear Mark Kahn reeling in his plush seat in London when he hears me say that. Not a structure, a process, Mark. It gives a process to what we're trying to accomplish. I love that.
So I have a client I'd love to just reflect with you around. I'm wondering if it's around breaking contact. And he just smiles the whole session, even although he's talking about something that's very hard for him. So he'll be very angry, but he smiles. Is that a way of breaking contact, of getting out of the intensity of it?
So there are, Pearls would talk about there are 6 ways of breaking contact, disruptions to contact. So I don't know your client, and I don't know, it would be too easy to say it's this or this, but it feels to me like as a coach it would be worth exploring 2 particular areas.
Right.
So the first area is simple deflection, where he's using the smile or perhaps the grimace just to deflect you from taking it further or deflect you from thinking you're getting to him. Just protecting through deflection. That's possible. I would explore that. I would, and the way to do this is to not deal with any content. Just for a second, stop. Use half of a session to say, right, from now on, we're not going to use content. help him to learn the skill of becoming aware of how he's experiencing this work. I see you fidgeting. I see you moving your fingers. Why are you doing that? What's that helping you do? And it'll be so confusing to him. It'll disrupt his normal protected patterns. You just really observe his body. And it's a weird thing to say as a coach, and that's something I've really had to become comfortable with over the years. But be aware of his body. Just what is he doing? Where is he flushing? I had a guy yesterday who kept. I did have a busy day yesterday, so I have lots of stories from yesterday. But I had one guy who kept reaching for his throat, almost like he was going to strangle himself. Jeez. So you don't just let it happen; you observe it. Right. You're reaching for your throat. What is that about? You don't interpret that it looks like you're strangling, but what is? And then if they don't know, you make them do it again.
Okay.
You exaggerate it, and you say, "What does that feel? What's the experience of holding your throat?" So that's the first one, possible deflection, and it's worth experiencing, worth exploring. I mean, through just going to the body, get away from the head.
Right.
The second one, I think this may be more, is one of our key ways of not making contact is to feel nothing. Desensitization. And sometimes you'll meet people who tell you the most tragic stories, or the most horrible political stories, or the stories of profound loss, and there's just nothing happening. You just get a sense as a coach that you're being pushed away because there's nothing to work with. There's a story, but you could read that in the newspaper.
Right.
Where's the real person? And I think that's hard work, because often that's work you might try out as a coach, but often that may be work that needs to... You'll realize if you're just not breaking through, there comes a point where maybe you want to refer the person onwards. I just feel that desensitization thing is often very profound when you see it happening. And a fixed grin, is a lovely way of desensitizing. A giggle or a nervous laugh or a snort there could well be a deflection. It's not always. Sometimes the person finds something funny. So it's not if it happens once or if it happens even every day. The person may be a very happy person and they love to giggle. But if it happens a lot, and if it feels to you like it's breaking the moment, or if it's helping for you not to go forward, the best thing to do is stop being about content and just settle into helping the person. I see you doing it right now. As you sat back, you breathe deeply, to breathe and to talk to you about their experience of being in their body. Just that experience of being in their body often opens up new awarenesses.
So I have to know, what was the strangling?
I didn't go there.
Okay.
Didn't go there. I asked him, you've done this a few times, what's that about? And he did it, and he just said it feels comfortable.
Okay.
And so in another modality, I may start interpreting. But in my modality, which is about the phenomenon of what is being experienced right now, it was enough for me to allow this person to feel that they were being comforted. I don't need to know the truth of that. I want the person to ask themselves the question, why did I do that? I don't need to know the answer. Maybe right now.
I need the answer, James.
I've got a great course you should come on.
What a gift that would be. James, I wanted to ask you around your sort of standout, most difficult client that you've had and used Gestalt in a successful way.
I'm coaching a very, very, very beautiful client. She's I don't want to say what age she is in case she listens and I get it wrong. But she's not 25 and she's not 55.
Okay.
And she's a successful businesswoman. She's the second leader of a very substantial family business, hundreds of millions of euros turnover. And in my first session with her, I sat her down, and we were on top. She owns a She owns a business, and it's in a beautiful old building. And on top of the building is a roof, a flat roof. And we were sitting on the flat roof under an umbrella. And it had been quite a complex negotiation for me to actually be there as her new executive coach. And as we sat together, I said to her, so I'm trying to establish ground. I'm trying to begin the process of drawing her into contact. It's sometimes very quick, and it's often very long, and occasionally it doesn't happen at all in the session. Right. You just keep on working towards it. It's a bit like a tango. You're sort of moving forward, moving backwards. And I said to her, I want to say to you that from this moment onwards, and for all of our time together, I need nothing from you. I don't want anything from you. The contract is settled. That's all I'll ever want from you. Now I just want to help you express yourself, express the needs you have, and we'll move towards the goals or the purpose you've created. And it was, so you've got to picture it. It was warm. We're sitting in this beautiful place. We've got this beautiful view. And probably she's sitting still for the first hour and a half that she sat still for how many months. And she burst into tears. She just burst into tears, not sobbing uncontrollably, but just really real emotional movement. And I left her with that. So I'm not running around to give her tissues and things. I want her to. She wasn't traumatized. It wasn't a traumatic cry. It was something else.
It was a relief for her.
It was something like that. Yeah. And after a while, I said, "What was your experience of that? What was your experience of that?" And she said, "I think that's probably one of the first times in my whole life that someone's ever told me they want nothing from me. They're just there for me." Our work from then on wasn't about me being a business coach, although I'm there to help her restructure and develop all sorts of things and team and her own leadership. But it just puts us in a completely different footing. And my only question was, or my only statement was, from this point onwards, I need nothing more from you. And that's not a standard question of mine. And I wouldn't suggest that as a standard question or statement. It was right in that moment with her. There was something in the way, there was something about this that was appropriate.
That's a beautiful story, and I think it's a great place to end. James, before I end, there's one more question, and apologies for the question, but there's been leadership changes in America. And I was wondering, if you were to coach the new president of America from an awareness point of view, what would be the critical things that you would work on with that coach, with that president?
So the question about Donald Trump is an interesting one, because his persona is so polarizing. Very few people are middle road about their feelings about him.
It's true.
So I find as you asked me the question, I get swamped with feelings about, well, it would be impossible, he wouldn't want coaching. And then I sort of settle into trying to make contact with your question. And I'm thinking that in Donald Trump's world, there are many people who find him very attractive as a leader, as a person they can talk to. He's built business. He's built businesses. He's got good businesses all over. And in those businesses are great people who get great value from Donald Trump. The media is doing its job, but its job is not to let us see the real part, because he doesn't know how to easily show the real part. So as his coach, I would ask him, I think there would be a strong tendency to manufacture an image, and I would use a lot of body work. It would be hard, because I don't feel that would be an easy place to go. But my real question would be, what's the experience of working with the people who find you a great and beautiful leader? What's that experience? And just to stay in the healthy places, I think maybe there would be the opportunity for breakthrough if there was to be one. Not to look at the noise, but to go into, this is a good man. He's a good man trying his hardest to do good stuff. The fact that many millions of people don't like him doesn't belie the fact that millions of people do like him. So as his coach, I would say, let's look at the good. Let's look at your experience of what's happening when people are responding warmly to you. And let's see if we can magnify that. Let's see if we can build something that uses that positively.
It would be a fascinating coaching story.
Do you have his number?
I'll set you guys up.
Good, thanks.
James, it's been wonderful, and of course we could continue talking. I have many more questions to ask, but I really think that our clients listening would get a lot of value from your time and your expertise, and we really appreciate you and hope you'll come back when you visit again.
I'd love to. Thank you. It's great to be back again.
Great. Thanks, James.
Thanks.
Thank you. How do goals drive your coaching versus connection and purpose? It's time to take your coaching to another level. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate your subscribership. Send any comments. Please rate us on iTunes. You can check it out also on our website, omnicor.co.za. We're really looking forward to chatting more about online assessments. Lots of controversy. It's going to be robust debate. So looking forward to that episode.